Hi, it's Mark Donegan with the Marketing Execution Podcast. A lot of founders believe that once you hit product market fit, success is guaranteed, but the data tells a very different story. The reality is, about 3/4 of products with validated fit still fail at launch. You know what the reason is? It's because they skip the hardest part, building a system to execute consistently. After over 2 decades of building go-to-market engines for B2B tech companies, I've seen this pattern destroy promising startups. In this episode, we're unpacking the process that makes execution repeatable instead of accidental.
Tune in, listen up, it's marketing time. Bright ideas sparking, blowing your mind. From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Welcome to the Marketing Execution Podcast. This is the show for tech founders and leaders building B2B products and technologies. We show you how to go further, faster to get the business results you need.
From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Mark, I've been chewing on something all week that I can't shake. You know how everyone in startup land is obsessed with building features? Like, that's the default mode. Ship more stuff, add more bells and whistles.
Oh, totally. It's like a reflex at this point.
Right? But I was reading through Dan Olsen's Lean Product Playbook, and he makes this argument that completely flipped my thinking. He's basically saying most founders are solving the wrong problem from day one.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What do you mean by wrong problem?
Well, here's the thing. Olsen argues that when you jump straight to solutions, you actually blind yourself to what customers really need. You're building features for problems you assume exist.
Yes, this is something I've seen destroy so many early stage companies. And I think there are really 2 or 3 critical pieces here that founders need to understand. The first one is what I call the problem obsession phase. And I know that sounds weird, but hear me out.
Problem obsession. Okay, I'm listening.
So most founders, they have an idea, right? They wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my gosh, I should build a meal planning app. And then they immediately start sketching features, calorie counters, recipe databases, shopping lists.
Which seems logical, right? You have an idea, you build it.
It seems logical, but here's the hidden secret that Olsen reveals. When you do that, you're actually narrowing your vision so dramatically that you might miss the real opportunity entirely. I once heard of a company that wanted to help young adults eat healthier. Classic problem, right? Sure, everybody wants that. But instead of jumping to meal plans, they actually sat with the problem. They dug into why young adults weren't eating healthy. And you know what they discovered? What? It wasn't about meal planning at all. It was about access to fresh produce. The real solution ended up being a platform connecting local farmers directly to consumers. Completely different product, completely different business model.
Wow. So if they had just built the meal planning app,
they would have been competing with 100 other apps doing the exact same thing. Instead, they found what Kim and Malborn call a blue ocean, uncontested market space.
Okay, so that's piece 1. Stay in the problem space longer. What's the second thing?
The second piece is something I talk about a lot here on the Marketing Execution Podcast, and it's about who you're actually talking to when you validate ideas. Olsen recommends these one-on-one customer discovery interviews, which is great, but here's what most people get wrong.
They do group interviews?
Sometimes, yeah, but even worse, they ask leading questions. They basically fish for the answers they want to hear.
Oh man, I've definitely been guilty of that.
We all have, but Olsen has this brilliant approach where you show customers a prototype and then you just shut up. You watch them struggle, you watch them get confused, and when they ask for help, instead of jumping in to rescue them, you ask another question.
Wait, so they're stuck and you just let them be stuck?
Yes, because that's where the gold is. If someone can't find your search function, you don't point to it. You ask, where would you expect to find it? Now you've learned something real about user expectations.
That's actually kind of uncomfortable to think about, just watching someone struggle with your baby.
It's brutal, but it's the only way to get unbiased feedback. And look, there was this one founder who told me she ran like 12 rounds of customer interviews before she felt confident in her MVP. 12 rounds. Most people do one or two and call it good.
So patience is really the game here.
Patience and discipline. Which brings me to the third piece, and this one's going to sound counterintuitive.
Hit me.
You need to build less into your MVP than you think. Way less.
Okay, but doesn't that risk looking unfinished, like you don't care?
Here's the secret. Olsen has this framework where you categorize customer needs into 3 buckets: essential needs, performance needs, and bonus features. Your MVP should nail all the essentials, your top performance need, and 1 bonus feature. That's it.
Just one bonus feature?
Just one, but here's why it's genius. That 1 bonus feature is what makes you memorable, is what makes people go, oh, did you see that thing they added? It's unexpected. It delights people, but you're not wasting resources on 5 bonus features that nobody asked for. So it's like strategic restraint. Exactly, strategic restraint. I saw a recent report from CB Insights that said that one of the reasons startups fail is that they are still building something nobody wants. And it's not because founders are dumb, it's because they're building too much of the wrong things instead of the right minimum.
You know what's interesting? This whole approach requires you to be really honest with yourself about what's essential versus what's just nice to have.
And that's hard because as a founder, you're emotionally attached to every feature you've dreamed up. But Olsen gives you this really practical tool. You calculate the ROI for each feature before you build it. Revenue minus cost divided by cost. If the math doesn't work, the feature doesn't make the cut.
Even if you love it?
Especially if you love it. Look, I've watched so many founders burn through runway building features they were personally excited about that customers couldn't care less about.
That's sobering. So we've got staying in the problem space, getting brutally honest customer feedback, and building strategically less. These all seem connected to this idea of reducing waste.
They are connected. It's all about getting to product market fit with the minimum time, effort, and cost. Because here's the reality. You're going to be wrong about a lot of your assumptions. The question is whether you find out when you spent $10,000 or $10 million.
Mark, that's fascinating. Let's pivot for a second and talk about what happens after you validated the MVP. Like, how do you know which metrics actually matter when you're trying to optimize?
You know, Tim, that's actually the question that separates founders who stumble into success from those who engineer it. And I think Olsen's framework here it's deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful.
Okay, break it down for me. Because I feel like every startup I talk to is drowning in data. They've got dashboards with like 40 different numbers flashing at them.
Right, and that's exactly the problem. They're measuring everything, which means they're really measuring nothing. Look, Olsen makes this distinction that I think is crucial. He says you need to identify what he calls your key metrics. Not all the metrics, the key metric.
So how do you figure out which ones actually matter?
Well, it depends entirely on where you are in your journey, and this is where most founders get it backwards. I know of a company that launched a productivity app, right? Beautiful product, great UX, and they immediately started obsessing over user acquisition. They were spending thousands on ads, tracking cost per install, celebrating every spike in downloads. That sounds reasonable, though. It sounds reasonable, but here's what they missed. Their retention was terrible. Like people would download the app, use it once, maybe twice, and then gone. So they were essentially pouring water into a bucket with a massive hole in the bottom.
Oh man, so they should have been looking at retention first.
Exactly. Olsen argues that for newly launched products, retention is almost always the metric you should optimize before anything else. Because what's the point of acquiring 100,000 users if 95,000 of them disappear after a week?
That's a painful lesson to learn the hard way.
And it's not just about picking the right metric. It's about understanding the relationship between metrics. This is where it gets really interesting. You need to calculate the ROI of improving each metric. Like if you improve retention by 10% versus improving conversion by 10%, which one actually moves the needle more for your specific business?
Wait, so you're doing math before you decide what to optimize?
You have to. Otherwise, you're just guessing, and guessing is expensive.
Okay, but here's what I'm struggling with. How do you even know what your baseline is? Like, what's a good retention rate? What's a bad one?
So this is where Olsen's dashboard concept comes in. Before you can improve anything, you need to know where you currently stand. You create this single view where you can see all your key metrics at a glance. Some people call it a scorecard. Whatever you call it, the point is you can't manage what you don't measure.
Right. We've actually discussed the category design scorecard in our previous episode.
Yeah, but here's the hidden secret that nobody talks about. Your baseline isn't just a number, it's a story. When you look at your retention curve, you're not just seeing that 30% of users come back after day 7. You're seeing where they drop off, when they drop off, and if you dig deeper, why they drop off.
So the metric is just a starting point of the investigation.
Yes, the metric tells you something's wrong. The investigation tells you what to fix. And then, and this is the part I love about Olsen's approach, you don't just implement random fixes. You estimate the ROI of each potential solution before you build it.
There's that ROI calculation again.
It keeps coming back because resources are finite. Time is finite. You can't do everything, so you'd better make sure you're doing the right thing. I talked to a founder recently who had this list of like 20 features she wanted to add to improve engagement. 20. And I asked her, okay, which one of these will have the biggest impact for the least effort? What did she say? She had no idea. She'd never thought about it that way. So we sat down and actually ranked them. Turns out 3 of those features would probably deliver 80% of the value. The other 17 were nice to have, but they could wait. Strategic restraint again. It's always strategic restraint. That's the through line of everything Olsen teaches. Do less, but do it better. Measure less, but measure what matters. Build less, but build what counts.
You know what strikes me about all this? It requires a level of honesty that's uncomfortable. Like, you have to look at your numbers and admit when something isn't working.
And that's hard because as founders, we're emotionally invested. We want our product to succeed. So there's this temptation to cherry pick the metrics that make us look good and ignore the ones that don't. But Olsen's framework forces you to confront reality.
Okay, so we've talked about identifying the right metrics, establishing baselines, calculating ROI before making changes. This all feels very strategic, but I'm curious, how does this actually play out in practice? Like, what does it look like when you're in the trenches actually doing this stuff day to day?
All right, Tim, let's get into how people can actually use this stuff.
Yes, that's exactly what I want to hear. Give me the playbook.
Okay, so here's the thing. When you're in the trenches, it comes down to 3 moves, 3 things you do every single week. And I'm going to steal from a company that did this really well.
Which one?
Superhuman, the email app. You know how they got to product market fit?
I've heard bits and pieces, but
They asked one question, just one. They asked users, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? And the options were very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed.
that's it.
That's it. And here's the magic number. If 40% or more say very disappointed, you've got product market fit. If you're under 40, you keep iterating.
So wait, you're saying I could literally send that survey tomorrow and know where I stand?
Yes, that's move number 1. Establish your baseline with a simple question. Not 40 metrics, not some fancy dashboard with charts everywhere. One question, one number.
That feels almost too simple.
Simple is the point. Olsen hammers this home. You can't manage what you don't measure, but you also can't measure everything. So pick the one thing that tells you if you're winning or losing.
Okay, what's move 2?
Move 2 is talk to the people who said somewhat disappointed.
Not the very disappointed ones?
No, the very disappointed people already love you. They're not your problem. The somewhat disappointed crowd, they're your gold mine because they're almost there. Something's holding them back. And if you can figure out what that something is,
You convert them to very disappointed.
right, which bumps up your percentage, which gets you closer to product market fit.
Honestly, that's kind of beautiful.
It is beautiful because it's so efficient. You're not guessing, you're not building features nobody asked for. You're surgically fixing the exact thing that's blocking people from loving your product.
All right, so we've got establish your baseline, talk to the somewhat disappointed crowd. What's move 3?
Move 3 is where most founders mess up. You got to calculate ROI before you build anything.
There's that ROI thing again.
I told you it keeps coming back. But here's what this looks like in practice. Let's say you've got a list of 5 things you could fix or build, 5 potential improvements. Most founders just pick the one that sounds coolest, or the one their loudest customer asks for, or honestly, the one they personally want to build because it's more fun.
Guilty.
We're all guilty, but Olsen's framework says no. You sit down, you estimate how much each improvement would cost in time and resources, then you estimate how much it would move your key metric.
So you're doing math before you write any code.
Before you write a single line. And look, the estimates don't have to be perfect. You're not trying to predict the future with precision. You're trying to compare options. Is fixing onboarding going to move the needle more than adding that new integration? Probably yes. Is it going to cost less? Also probably yes.
So you stack rank everything by bang for your buck.
Exactly. And here's a real example. Miro, the whiteboard app. When they were in the early stages, they could have built a million features, fancy templates, more shapes, better export options, all the stuff users were asking for.
But they didn't?
They focused on one thing, making collaboration feel instant. Like when you move something on the board, your teammate sees it move at the same time. No lag, no delay.
Real-time sync.
Yeah, and that one thing, that's what made marketing teams fall in love with it. That's what got them their viral loop. Because when something feels magical, people show it to their coworkers. They show their friends.
So they calculated that real-time sync would have the highest ROI and just went all in.
All in. They ignored the feature requests that would have scattered their focus. Strategic restraint again.
You know what I love about this? It's not about working harder. It's about working on the right stuff.
And that's the whole game. Because look, every founder I know is already working insanely hard, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. The problem is never effort. The problem is direction.
Effort without direction is just...
It's just motion. It's not progress. And Olsen's framework gives you a compass, baseline metric, talk to the right users, calculate ROI before building. That's your weekly rhythm.
So if I'm a founder listening to this right now, Monday morning, I could send that survey.
Monday morning takes 5 minutes to set up. By Wednesday, you've got your number. By Friday, you've called 3 somewhat disappointed users and you know exactly what to fix.
And then the next week, you estimate ROI on the fixes and pick the best one.
And you ship it. And you measure again, and the cycle repeats. That's the lean product playbook in action. Not theory, not frameworks on a whiteboard, actual work that moves actual numbers.
I wish someone had explained it this way, like 5 years ago.
Better late than never, right? The founders who get this, they just move faster. They waste less money. They built products people actually want instead of products they think people want.
It's like you're replacing intuition with evidence.
Not replacing, supplementing. Your intuition still matters, but now you've got data to back it up, or data that tells you your intuition was wrong. Either way, you win.
Either way, you learn.
Exactly. Every cycle teaches you something, and over time, you just get better at predicting what's going to work. Your intuition gets sharper because it's informed by real feedback.
Okay, Mark, we've covered a lot of ground today. The metric stuff from part 2, now all this practical application. I'm curious. If you had to summarize everything we've talked about, like the whole episode, what would be the key takeaways for someone who's trying to build a product people actually want?
All right, let me bring this all together. We started with the most fundamental shift founders need to make, staying in the problem space longer. When you rush to build features, you blind yourself to what customers actually need. That company that wanted to help young adults eat healthier, they could have built another meal planning app. Instead, they discovered the real problem was access to fresh produce. Completely different business. All right, then we talked about getting brutally honest feedback. Show customers your prototype and just shut up. Let them struggle. Ask questions instead of rescuing them. And finally, we covered the weekly rhythm. One survey question to establish your baseline, calls with the somewhat disappointed users, ROI calculations before you build anything. That's the whole playbook.
Mark, after all that, what's the one thing you really hope people don't forget?
Here's what keeps me up at night. Most startups don't fail because founders aren't smart enough or don't work hard enough. They fail because they fall in love with their solution instead of their customer's problem. But the founders who win are the ones who stay curious longer than they feel comfortable. They let the evidence change their mind. So if you remember nothing else, fall in love with the problem. The solution will follow. The Marketing Execution Podcast is produced by Growth Stage Marketing. We are on a mission to see your company reach wild success using marketing pods.
Too big, accept dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the marketing execution movement and community. To learn how growth stage marketing clients reach more buyers and drive business impact, go to growthstage.marketing. That's growthstage.marketing.